Picture this. You're standing in your kitchen, and you are about to confront someone in your life about something genuinely hurtful they did.
Right.
And you aren't coming in hot, You aren't being hysterical or reactive. You have spent, like, the last 3 days mentally organizing your thoughts.
You're grounded.
Exactly. You have the facts lined up, you have the specific memory, you know exactly what happened, and you are simply holding a reasonable boundary.
The intention is just to clear the air.
Yeah.
Right, to find some mutual understanding and just, move forward.
Yeah, but then the conversation starts, and somehow, imperceptibly at first, the ground beneath you just starts to shift.
Yep.
And 30 minutes later, you are the one crying.
Yeah.
You are the one apologizing. You're sitting there completely depleted, promising to work on your own quote-unquote trust issues, or your tone of voice, and the original issue, the actual event you came to talk about.
It's just gone.
It has vanished into thin air.
It is entirely gone from the room. I mean, it has been completely replaced by a referendum on your character.
So here is the terrifying question you're left asking yourself in the aftermath, right?
Right.
Did you just lose your mind?
Right.
Is your memory actually failing you? Or did you just encounter one of the most sophisticated, unconscious psychological defense mechanisms known to behavioral science?
I can tell you right now, the disorientation you feel in that moment is not a sign of a failing memory.
Yeah.
And it is certainly not a sign of weakness. It is a documented neurological symptom of surviving a reality distortion field. You essentially walked into a psychological wood chipper.
Wow, a psychological wood chipper.
That really is what it feels like. So today we are taking a deep dive into the hidden architecture of covert narcissism, emotional manipulation, and, well, toxic relationships.
Yes.
We're pulling from a massive stack of psychological research, clinical therapy frameworks, trauma studies, and some truly harrowing real-life survivor testimonies, just to understand exactly what happens in these interactions.
It's so important.
Our mission here is to dismantle the invisible cage that so many people find themselves trapped in. And I think we really need to establish a baseline for this exploration right up front.
Absolutely.
This is a clinical, documentary-style look into human behavior.
Mm.
We are not here to casually throw around internet buzzwords at our exes or, our parents just because they were selfish once or twice.
Right. Everyone can be selfish sometimes.
Exactly. We are taking a journey into the neurobiology of manipulation, the trauma responses of the human body, and the exact predictable script that manipulative people use to systematically rewrite reality.
I want to start with a concept from our sources that completely flipped my understanding of this entire dynamic, because there is a core paradox to all of this.
The empathy paradox.
Yes, because if you are listening to this and you've been in this situation, you probably carry a lot of shame.
Oh, massive amounts of shame.
You think, I'm smart, I'm capable, how did I let someone manipulate me like this? I must be incredibly naive.
Right.
But the research shows the exact opposite.
It really does. The manipulation is successful precisely because you possess incredibly high empathy.
Wait, really? Because of empathy?
Yes, you have this willingness to self-reflect. When conflict arises, you have a natural pro-social instinct to ask, well, could I be wrong?
Oh, wow.
Is there a misunderstanding? Could I have hurt them without realizing it?
Right, which is what you're supposed to do in a healthy relationship.
Exactly. Those are beautiful traits. They are the absolute glue of healthy relationships. But in this specific dynamic, your greatest strengths, your empathy, and your capacity for self-doubt are weaponized against you.
So they use it against you.
The manipulator relies entirely on your willingness to take the blame.
So if this manipulation is basically invisible, and if the trap uses your own empathy as the bait, what does the trap actually look like? Because, you can't fight something you can't see.
It looks like a script.
Okay.
A very specific, highly predictable cascade of behaviors.
Yeah.
And the most accurate distillation of this script isn't actually found in a diagnostic manual. That's a piece of writing by Dana Craig that has become a cornerstone in trauma recovery communities over the years.
The Narcissist's prayer.
Yes, the Narcissist's prayer.
We are going to break this prayer down line by line, because reading it in the sources, it honestly felt like looking at the source code of a computer virus.
That's a great analogy.
It operates as this forensic behavioral cascade.
Yeah.
6 stages of cognitive shock. And the first line of the prayer is the manipulator's first line of defense, which is, that didn't happen.
Outright denial. But we have to look at the mechanism here, because this isn't just a garden variety lie.
Right.
When someone bumps your car in a parking lot and says, I didn't do it, they know they did it.
Yeah, they just don't want to pay for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're just trying to avoid paying a $500 deductible They have a conscious awareness of their deceit. But in pathological narcissism, we are looking at something much more primitive.
What is it called?
It's called delusional amnesia and memory splitting.
Wait, so are you saying they literally do not remember? Because I always assumed they were just gaslighting me on purpose, like, a politician spinning a scandal.
That implies a conscious Machiavellian strategy, which honestly gives them way too much credit.
Oh, interesting.
We have to look at the neurobiology of the fragile ego. To a pathologically narcissistic person, their false self, this meticulously constructed image of perfection, superiority, and blamelessness is their literal survival mechanism.
Okay, so it keeps them psychologically alive.
Yes. If they admit fault, that false self shatters. It triggers a sensation akin to psychic death.
Wow.
To prevent that ego death, their brain literally cleanses itself of negative memories. They reject the objective truth and retroactively substitute a version of reality where they are blameless.
That is wild.
The imperfection simply cannot exist. So, in their subjective reality, the event truly did not happen.
There is a story in our sources from a survivor that perfectly illustrates how deep this delusion actually goes.
Oh, the mother in therapy.
Yes. Their mother actually started therapy and was prescribed medication for a mood disorder, and the medication started working. But a side effect was that the mother's cognitive distortions faded. She started remembering things as they really happened in the past.
And that's dangerous for her.
Exactly. And the reality of her own abusive behavior toward her children was so psychologically crushing that she couldn't process it. She couldn't handle the shame.
No, the system couldn't hold it.
So she used a minor, like $5 increase in a therapy copay as an excuse to quit the medication entirely, drop the therapist, and slip right back into the narcissistic delusion.
She unconsciously chose the delusion because the truth was lethal to her psychological structure.
That is a profound, tragic self-deception.
It really is. But this brings us to the next stage of the cascade. Because what happens when you, the person confronting them, bring undeniable proof to the kitchen island?
Like a text message or an audio recording.
Exactly. A text, a bank statement. When that first line of defense that didn't happen is structurally dismantled by objective reality, the system cannot hold.
Right.
It automatically defaults to the second line of the prayer.
Which is, and if it did, it wasn't that bad.
Minimization. They alter the scale of the transgression.
This is where I feel like the psychological term gaslighting really takes root, because they are finally admitting the event occurred, but they are hacking your interpretation of it.
Yes, beautifully put.
They tell you that your reaction to the event is defective. You're too sensitive, or it was just a joke. Lighten up.
You're being dramatic.
Yeah, you're being dramatic.
The effect this has on the victim is insidious.
Yeah.
And it happens really slowly over time.
How so?
You start to lose trust in your own internal barometer for pain.
Oh.
Think about it like this. If someone steps on your foot with a heavy boot and you say, "Ouch, you're hurting me,"
Right.
and they look you dead in the eye and say, "I am barely touching you. Why are you screaming like a maniac?"
That would be so disorienting.
Your first instinct, because of your high empathy, is to wonder if something is neurologically wrong with your foot.
Wow. Yes. You question yourself first.
You stop trusting your own senses. You start outsourcing your reality to the person abusing you.
Which paves the way for the third line of the script, which is, and if it was, that's not a big deal.
Invalidation. It is the complete dismissal of your emotional reality.
So they're saying my feelings just don't matter.
Exactly. They're saying that even if the event happened, and even if we agree it was objectively bad, your feelings about it do not matter.
What's the hidden need there?
The hidden emotional need is to reinforce their superiority. Your pain is framed as just an inconvenience to their day.
But let's say you keep pushing. You are determined to hold this boundary. You say, no, it is a big deal and it severely hurt my feelings. You corner them. Then we hit the fourth line, right?
Right.
And if it is, that's not my fault.
Blame shifting. We really have to ask here, how does a human being actively dodge fault when they were the only other person in the room who did the thing?
Seriously, how?
They point to circumstance. They point to stress. I haven't had my coffee. My boss is writing me at work right now.
Oh, right, the excuses.
Or, most destructively, they point the finger directly back at you.
Like, if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have done that.
Exactly. If you hadn't nagged me about the dishes, I wouldn't have had to yell at you.
Okay, but what if you trap them in a logic box? What if they are forced, through sheer exhaustion or undeniable evidence, to admit they did it, it was bad, it was a big deal, and it was entirely their fault?
Then you get line 5.
And if it was, I didn't mean it.
The non-apology.
I want to pause on this one because I think a lot of people, myself included, get super tangled up here.
It's very confusing.
Yeah, because I have a friend who is neurodivergent, and when they make a social misstep or a mistake, they will sometimes spend 20 minutes explaining exactly what sensory overload or miscommunication or distraction led to the mistake.
Right.
They are essentially saying, I didn't mean it. So how is that different from a narcissist saying, I didn't mean it? Because on the surface, the words are identical.
The distinction lies entirely in the underlying intent and the psychological mechanism at play. When an autistic or neurodivergent person shows their work after a mistake, they are doing it out of deep self-criticism and a desire for social harmony.
But they want to fix it.
Yes, they are analyzing the breakdown in logic or sensory processing out loud to ensure the mistake never happens again. Their ultimate goal is accountability and relational repair.
That makes total sense.
But when the narcissist says, I didn't mean it like that, you're always twisting my words, their goal is the exact opposite.
They just want to get away with it.
They are trying to evade accountability entirely. They were demanding that because their intentions are inherently pure and perfect, the actual impact of their actions should be legally null and void.
Like, I'm sorry you chose to feel that way.
Exactly.
The classic non-apology that somehow makes you feel worse than no apology at all. Which brings us to the final, most devastating line of the prayer.
The absolute bottom of the cascade.
Yeah, where the mask completely slips. And if I did, you deserved it.
Projection and justification.
It's brutal.
When all other ego defenses fail, when denial, minimization, invalidation, and blame shifting are entirely exhausted, the narcissist is left holding the burning, intolerable sensation of their own shame.
And they can't handle it.
They cannot hold it. So they violently project it onto you.
Yeah.
You become the retroactive reason the abuse was necessary.
There is a terrifying example of this in the research materials. A survivor recounts being 11 years old, quietly sitting on her bed reading a Harry Potter book.
I remember this case. It's tough.
It really is. Her mother walks in, demands she put it down, and orders her to read a graphic, terrifying medical dictionary instead. The child, understandably, says no.
Right.
The mother flies into a blind rage, picks up this massive, heavy, hardcover dictionary and throws it directly at the child's face, shattering her nose.
Horrific.
There is blood everywhere. And what is the mother's immediate reaction?
She doesn't offer aid. She screams at the bleeding child for making her do it.
She literally makes the 11-year-old clean up her own blood from the carpet. And then the mother goes to her own bedroom and lies down with a cold compress to recover from the, quote, shock of the child's disrespect.
Making herself the victim.
Exactly. She makes herself the victim of the nose breaking. And over the years, the survivor notes that the mother rewrote the history exactly following the prayer.
Hitting every single stage.
Yes, she'd say, your nose isn't that bad. Sarah Jessica Parker has a nose like that. It was an accident. I didn't mean to throw it that hard. And you deserved it for being such a disobedient brat to your own mother.
It is chilling to hear, but we have to understand that this sequence, from denial all the way down to justification, is not a conscious, plotted strategy drawn up on a whiteboard.
It's not premeditated.
No. It is a reflexive, defensive cascade. Think of a physical reflex when you touch a hot stove, right?
Yeah, you pull back instantly.
Your hand pulls back before your conscious brain even registers the heat. When the narcissist's false self is threatened by the heat of accountability, their psychological system defaults to the next layer of defense and the next and the next, until you, the victim, are the one left holding all the shame.
Okay, so the narcissist's prayer is the internal script. It's the operating system running in the background. But how does this actually look in the wild?
In real-time conversation.
Right. When you are standing in your kitchen having an argument, how does this internal script weaponize the physical space between you?
To understand the external behavior, we really have to look at a concept coined by Dr. Jennifer Freed, an expert in trauma psychology back in the 1990s.
DARVO.
Yes, it is an acronym. DARVO, D-A-R-V-O. It stands for Deny, Attack, and Reverse Victim and Offender.
This is the mechanism that explains the opening of our deep dive. This is why you walk into a room with a legitimate grievance and walk out apologizing for your own existence.
DARVO is essentially the narcissist's prayer weaponized in real-time dialogue. First, they deny the behavior. I didn't say that.
Right, the first line of the prayer.
But as we discussed, denial alone isn't always enough to neutralize the threat you pose by holding them accountable. They need to put you on your heels. So they immediately move to the attack phase.
And this attack phase is wild to experience because it is a sudden, whiplash-inducing pivot.
It's completely disorienting.
You are talking about the fact that they forgot to pick up the kids from school, and suddenly, mid-sentence, they are assassinating your character. They bring up a mistake you made on a vacation 3 years ago. They call you unstable. They question your mental health. They critique your tone of voice. Why do they attack so viciously and so off-topic?
We have to look at what is happening emotionally beneath the surface here. The narcissist cannot tolerate the sensation of shame.
Like we said, it's like psychic death.
Yes. To a healthy person, shame feels like a mistake. It feels bad, but you learn from it. To a pathologically narcissistic mind, shame feels like an existential crisis. It is psychological annihilation. It burns like acid. They cannot hold it, so they must dump it onto you. The attack is designed to create chaos. If you are suddenly busy defending your own character against wild accusations, you are no longer holding them accountable for leaving the kids at school.
Ah, so the subject has been successfully changed.
Exactly.
They're essentially playing hot potato with shame.
That is an incredibly apt way to put it, though the stakes for them feel like psychological survival.
It's a complete hijacking of the conversation, which leads to the R and the V and the O, reversing victim and offender.
This is the absolute crescendo of the manipulation. They don't just dodge the blame, they steal your victimhood.
There is a classic example of this in the relationship counseling sources we reviewed. A partner catches their significant other cheating.
Yes.
It's not a suspicion. They have the actual texts on the phone. It's an undeniable proof. They confront the cheater, and within 5 minutes, what happens?
A pivot.
The cheater completely bypasses the infidelity and launches an aggressive attack on the partner for, quote, violating their privacy by looking at the phone in the first place.
The cheater becomes the persecuted victim of a privacy violation, and the partner who was just betrayed becomes the oppressive, controlling, toxic offender.
The original issue, the affair, is completely buried under the manufactured outrage of the reversal.
The partner who was cheated on is suddenly defending their decision to look at the screen.
And the research points out that Darvo isn't just interpersonal. It happens on a massive systemic scale, too. We see this with institutions covering up abuse all the time.
Absolutely. Whenever an institution is confronted with systemic harm, the corporate reflex is often to deny the allegations, attack the credibility of the whistleblowers,
Wow.
labeling them as disgruntled, unstable, or financially motivated, and reverse the roles, claiming the institution itself is the victim of a malicious smear campaign.
So it scales up perfectly.
It does. The sources also highlight how this operates in the political sphere.
Right.
Public figures frequently utilize Darvo to manage populations. For instance, when confronted with hard data about the negative impacts of a specific policy, a political leader might deny the reality of the data, attack the experts or journalists presenting it, and frame themselves and their supporters as the ultimate victims of a partisan witch hunt.
Interesting.
The mechanism relies heavily on power imbalances to frame the powerful as the persecuted. And we are analyzing this purely objectively as a structural mechanism of communication. It is simply a highly predictable pattern for evading accountability, regardless of who uses it.
So if we bring this back down to the individual level, what is actually happening in your brain when someone pulls a Darvo on you in the living room?
The neurobiology of it.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people feel immense shame that they fall for it. They think, I run a company, I manage 50 people, I negotiate complex contracts. How did I end up crying and apologizing to the person who just lied to my face?
I cannot stress this enough. Intelligence has absolutely nothing to do with it. You cannot outthink a biological hijack.
A biological hijack.
When reality is violently inverted like that, when you walk in with a fact and are suddenly accused of being a monster, your prefrontal cortex, which is the logic and reasoning center of your brain, literally short circuits.
It just shuts down.
It cannot process two entirely contradictory realities at the exact same millisecond.
It's like a computer throwing a fatal error screen. When you try to run 2 incompatible operating systems at once, the system just crashes.
A fatal error is a perfect analogy.
Mm.
And when the logic center crashes, the amygdala, your brain's primitive fear and threat center, takes over entirely.
Oh, wow.
Your body registers the sudden vicious attack on your character, not as a conversational disagreement, but as a literal survival threat.
And how does the human nervous system respond to an inescapable threat from a primary attachment figure?
It doesn't fight, it fawns.
The fawn response. We always hear about fight, flight, or freeze, but fawn is the 4th trauma response.
Yes. You appease the abuser to restore peace. Your nervous system bypasses your conscious mind and decides that the fastest way to stop this existential emotional threat is to take the blame, soothe the attacker, and restore the relational bond.
That is why you end up apologizing.
Exactly. Your body is trying to keep you safe from the emotional violence of the attack. You aren't weak. Your nervous system is working exactly as evolution designed it to under extreme duress.
That explains so much, the fact that the apology isn't a logical concession, but a biological survival mechanism.
Yes.
But this brings up the ultimate question.
Hmm.
The question every single person who has survived this eventually asks, usually at like 3 in the morning.
Right.
Do they know what they are doing? Do they just lack empathy entirely? Are they just monsters walking among us?
This takes us into what clinical psychology calls the empathy paradox. And the cutting-edge research on this is truly surprising because it challenges everything pop culture tells us. Well, the prevailing wisdom used to be that narcissists just completely lack empathy. They have a missing chip,
Yeah.
but that is fundamentally inaccurate.
If they don't lack empathy, what are they doing? Because I can tell you from the stories we read, it sure looks like a lack of empathy.
Yeah.
Are they just emotional vampires intentionally greening people?
Calling them emotional vampires implies a level of supernatural malice and master planning that isn't really there. Yeah. The truth is more clinical and in some ways more tragic.
Okay.
Research shows that narcissists actually have an entirely intact cognitive empathy.
Cognitive empathy, what does that mean?
That means they have the intellectual ability to recognize and understand another person's emotional state. They know you are in pain. They know what they just said hurt you.
They know it.
Oh, absolutely. They can read your micro-expressions and body language perfectly. In fact, they are often hyper-attuned to it.
Then why don't they stop? I mean, if they can see I'm crying and they know they caused it, why do they keep twisting the knife?
Because while they have cognitive empathy, they lack affective empathy, which is the emotional resonance and the motivation to engage with your pain.
So they see it, but they don't feel it.
They simply do not care, or they actively choose to ignore your pain because acknowledging your pain would require them to admit fault. And as we established, admitting fault threatens their fragile superiority.
So it's not that they can't see I'm bleeding, it's that my bleeding is inconvenient to their internal narrative of being a perfect, blameless person.
They recognize the blood, they just find it annoying that you're getting it on their shoes.
Wow.
And to truly understand why your pain is so easily discarded, we really have to look at object relations theory. This is where the developmental psychology gets quite dark, but it is the master key for understanding the entire dynamic.
In the outline, this was referred to as the terrifying reality of, quote, lack of whole object relations. Can we break that down? What does that actually mean in plain English?
Let's look at how a healthy human develops. When a toddler is very young, they don't have object constancy.
Right, peekaboo. If mom leaves the room, mom ceases to exist.
Exactly. As they grow, they learn that mom still exists even when she's out of sight. But more importantly, they develop emotional object constancy.
Where's that?
They learn that mom is a whole, separate human being who has good qualities and bad qualities. They learn they could be frustrated with mom for taking away a toy, but they still fundamentally love mom. Mom is a 3D person.
Right, they can hold two conflicting ideas at once. I am mad at you and I love you.
A pathologically narcissistic mind never achieved this developmental milestone. Their emotional development was arrested.
Oh.
To a narcissist, you are not a separate, autonomous 3D human being with your own internal life, your own fears, and your own history.
So if I'm not a person to them, what am I?
You are an internal object. You are a two-dimensional snapshot. You exist in their minds solely to perform a specific function, and that function is to regulate their fragile self-esteem.
That's terrifying.
When you are compliant, when you are praising them, when you are reflecting back to them how wonderful and special they are, you are the all-good object. You are idealized. You are put on a pedestal.
But what happens when I'm not?
The moment you express a boundary or have a need of your own that inconveniences them or point out a flaw, you threaten their self-esteem. Instantly, you become the all-bad object.
There's no in-between.
There is no gray area. They literally cannot access positive memories of you when they are angry with you.
This completely explains why the shifts in their behavior are so whiplash-inducing. I've heard survivors say, one day I was the love of their life, their soulmate. The next day, because I asked them to take out the trash in a tone they didn't like, I was suddenly the most abusive, toxic, horrible person they had ever met.
It makes total sense when you understand the splitting.
It does. They literally cannot hold the concept that you are a good person who is just slightly annoyed about the garbage. You have to be a monster so they can remain the victim.
Yes. You are either a perfect mirror reflecting their glory, or you are a shattered mirror that must be discarded. And this fundamental inability to see people as whole humans creates what we call the Ouroboros pattern.
The mythological snake eating its own tail.
Exactly.
Why does this pattern repeat endlessly from relationship to relationship, job to job?
Because the narcissist is driven by a profound, agonizing core wound of worthlessness and hidden shame. They are, psychologically speaking, an empty vessel.
Right.
To survive, they must constantly consume the energy, admiration, and emotional reactions of their relational network, what clinical psychology refers to as narcissistic supply.
But because they view people as objects.
And because they utilize Darvo and emotional abuse to maintain control over those objects, they inevitably destroy the relationships they rely on.
They consume the people around them until there is nothing left.
And by destroying those relationships, they trigger their own deepest unacknowledged terror, which is abandonment.
Oh, the irony.
The abandonment reinforces their hidden, terrifying belief that they truly are worthless, which makes their need for new narcissistic supply even more desperate, which makes their manipulation even more aggressive in the next relationship. It is a perpetual motion machine of relational destruction.
Okay, if this is what is happening inside the mind of the narcissist, this endless churning void of shame, projection, and consumption, what is happening inside the physical body of the person who loves them?
That's the real tragedy here.
The person who is on the receiving end of this reality distortion field for years or even decades.
This is where we really have to turn to the trauma research, specifically the groundbreaking work of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score. We often talk about emotional abuse as if it only affects the mind.
Yeah, like it's just bad memories.
But the toll on the victim is profoundly physiological.
Because you aren't just sad. You are living in a chronic state of alert. You are walking on eggshells 204/7, trying to anticipate the next Darvu attack. How does that actually break down the immune system?
When you are constantly scanning your environment for the next micro-expression of rage or analyzing the tone of a text message to gauge the danger level, your brain's HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, is stuck in the on position.
It never turns off.
Your nervous system perceives a constant threat to life. This chronic hypervigilance floods your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline.
And cortisol is toxic over time, right?
Over time, cortisol is highly corrosive to the body's tissues. This prolonged exposure leads to severe gastrointestinal issues because the gut-brain axis is disrupted.
Wow.
It leads to systemic, whole-body inflammation, chronic autoimmune flare-ups, debilitating fatigue, and ultimately complex PTSD. The victim's body is physically breaking down under the crushing weight of the cognitive dissonance.
I want to share a specific story from the survivor testimonies that perfectly, terrifyingly illustrates the psychological terror that causes this physical breakdown.
The tape recorder story.
Yes, the story of the 8-year-old girl and the tape recorder. We touched on it briefly earlier, but the full context is just essential. This woman is recounting her childhood. She's 8 years old. She spends her weekends doing unpaid clerical work, stuffing envelopes for her mother's home business for hours on end.
Just a child.
Her mother is described as constantly screaming, highly volatile, and notorious for promising rewards and then flatly denying she ever made the promise.
The gaslighting again.
Right. And the little girl, using her empathy, honestly thinks her mother just has a bad memory. She thinks it's a medical issue. So one day in the car, the mother promises that if the girl works for 5 hours straight, she can get a candy bar at the convenience store on the way home.
Okay.
The 8-year-old takes a little cassette tape recorder and secretly records this promise.
A child seeking objective reality in a household built on shifting sand.
Exactly. So fast forward. The girl works for hours, gets paper cuts all over her hands, does everything perfectly. They get in the car to go home. The mother drives right past the convenience store. The girl quietly asks for the candy. The mother immediately denies ever promising it. I never said that. You're making things up again. So the 8-year-old presses play on the tape recorder. She plays her mother's own voice, loud and clear, making the promise.
Let's look at what happens in the mother's brain in that specific second.
Because the mother slams on the brakes in the middle of a busy avenue. She stops traffic entirely.
Complete dysregulation.
She turns around in her seat and starts screaming at this 8-year-old with a level of rage that is completely unhinged from reality. Screaming about how dare she tape her, how evil the child is, how malicious and calculating.
Attack and reverse.
The survivor wrote in her account, "She didn't stop yelling until she'd reduced me to a sobbing, incoherent mess willing to admit to absolutely anything just to get her to leave me alone."
If we look at that through the clinical lens we've established, what we are witnessing is not a parenting dispute over candy. It is a full-blown psychological collapse.
She just lost it.
The mother could not utilize the first line of the narcissist's prayer. That didn't happen. The tape recorder was objective, undeniable proof that she was imperfect, that she lied, and that she was accountable to an 8-year-old child. A child she viewed merely as an internal object meant to serve her.
She couldn't gaslight the cassette tape. It was immune to her reality distortion.
And because her primary defense mechanism was blocked, her underlying core of shame was briefly, agonizingly exposed.
So to protect herself.
To protect herself from feeling that shame, she bypassed denial and went straight to the most violent form of attack and reversal. She terrorized the child until the child accepted the role of the offender.
It's just horrific.
It is a horrific, vivid example of how dangerous it is to pierce the narcissistic delusion. When you present undeniable truth, you don't get an apology, you get an explosion.
And this dynamic leads directly to a concept called reactive abuse, which I think is one of the most misunderstood and frequently weaponized concepts in toxic relationships.
Reactive abuse is a terrible misnomer in clinical circles, because it implies that the victim is mutually abusive. It's not abuse, it is a survival reaction.
Here is how it typically plays out behind closed doors. The abuser pokes you and pokes you and pokes you.
Right.
They use Darvo. They whisper vicious insults just low enough that no one else hears. They gaslight your memory. They keep you awake for hours, refusing to let you sleep, subjecting you to psychological sleep deprivation.
Which is actual torture.
They apply this relentless pressure until finally your nervous system simply snaps. You yell, you scream, you call them a horrible name, you throw a dinner plate at the wall.
And the absolute second you snap, the narcissist's demeanor instantly changes.
Like a light switch.
You pull out their phone, hit record, and say in a perfectly calm, chilled voice, "Look how crazy you are acting right now. Look how abusive you are being to me. Why are you screaming? You need psychiatric help."
It makes my blood boil just describing it. You are manipulated and pressured into carrying the visual, physical evidence of the abuse, while the abuser gets to play the calm, rational, terrified victim.
Yes.
They manufacture your reaction and then use your reaction to prove their Darvo narrative to you, to the police, to the therapists, to the courts.
It is the ultimate extraction of narcissistic supply. They prove their superiority and omnipotence by demonstrating their absolute control over your emotional state. They prove they can push a button and make you look insane.
Okay, I have to push back here. I have to ask the question that society always asks, and I can hear the listener thinking it too.
Let's hear it.
If it is this bad, if it causes physical illness, if it results in this level of mind-bending manipulation, terror, and reactive abuse, why do people stay?
Yeah.
Especially highly intelligent, driven, independent, empathetic people, why don't they just pack a bag and leave?
That is the most common question, and frankly, the most victim-blaming question society asks.
Because it assumes they have a choice.
It assumes the victim has free will in a situation where their neurobiology has been completely hijacked. To answer it, we have to understand that the abuser doesn't just provide pain. If they only provided pain, you would leave immediately.
Right.
They provide intermittent, intense relief from that pain.
The love bombing phase.
Yes. The relationship doesn't start with Darvo. It starts with intense idealization. They mirror your deepest desires. They study you. They make you feel seen and validated in a way no one ever has.
You're the golden object.
You are the golden object. Then suddenly the devaluation starts. The criticism, the coldness, the silent treatment. You are plunged into acute anxiety. You try everything to get the love back. You apologize. You change your behavior. And just when you are about to break, just when you're packing your bags, they throw you a crumb of affection. They offer a tearful, though fake, apology. They buy you a lavish gift. They give you that golden warmth again.
It's behavioral conditioning. You are a rat in a maze pushing a lever.
It is exactly that. It is intermittent reinforcement. It is the exact same psychological mechanism that makes slot machines so violently addictive.
Wow.
In neuroscience, intermittent reinforcement, a variable ratio schedule of rewards, is documented as the most powerful binding mechanism known to behavioral science. The victim's nervous system literally becomes addicted to the cycle of pain and relief.
So it's chemical.
The dopamine spike of the reconciliation binds you to the abuser. The trauma bond is not a metaphor. It is a profound chemical addiction.
But it goes even deeper than brain chemistry, doesn't it? It connects to how we were raised, our earliest blueprints for love.
Yes. Drawing on Stephen Porges and polyvagal theory, we look at the concept of neuroception.
Neuroception.
Neuroception is how our autonomic nervous system unconsciously scans our environment for safety or danger, far below our conscious awareness. If you were raised in a home that was emotionally unpredictable, where a parent was volatile, emotionally withholding, or conditionally loving, your nervous system learned a specific blueprint.
It learned that love is chaotic.
Exactly. It learned that love requires constant appeasement and vigilance.
So when a highly empathetic person with that background meets a healthy, steady, reliable partner who just wants to communicate openly, how does that feel to them?
It feels foreign. In many cases, it actually feels boring or even dangerous.
Dangerous.
Your nervous system doesn't recognize peace as safety. It recognizes peace as the ominous calm before the storm. It makes you anxious.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
But when the narcissist comes along with their intense cycle of euphoric highs and terrifying lows, your nervous system lights up like a Christmas tree. It says, I know this. I know how to survive this. This is familiar.
The chaos feels like home.
The chaos feels like home. The abuser didn't break you. They exploited a fracture that was already there.
That is incredibly profound. And to survive this environment day in and day out, the human psyche actually fragments to protect itself, right? We look at internal family systems, or IFS, developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz.
Yes. IFS is a fascinating lens for this. IFS posits that our mind is not a single monolith, but is made up of multiple subpersonalities or parts. In the context of severe narcissistic abuse, these parts take on extreme, exhausting roles just to help you survive Tuesday.
I found this part of the research so illuminating. You basically have this internal team managing the crisis. You have a part of you that acts like an extreme caretaker.
Right.
This is the part that is constantly managing the abuser's moods. It thinks, if I just cook dinner perfectly, if I just anticipate their needs before they even speak, if I just phrase this sentence perfectly, they won't explode.
And working alongside the caretaker is the hypervigilant part.
Like a bodyguard.
Yes, this part acts like a bodyguard that never sleeps. It is always scanning the environment, analyzing the tone of a text message, listening to the cadence of heavy footsteps in the hallway to gauge the level of danger before the abuser even opens the door.
Then you have the part of you that acts like a PR manager, the performing part.
The mask.
This is the mask you wear to the outside world. This is the part that goes to work, smiles at the neighbors, posts happy pictures on Instagram, and pretends everything in the marriage is completely normal, because admitting the truth to others, or to yourself, is too dangerous or shameful.
And the tragic reality is that the caretaker, the hypervigilant bodyguard, and the PR manager are all working 24 hours a day to protect one specific entity buried deep within you.
Which is?
The exile.
The terrified inner child.
The exile holds the core pain and trauma. The exile is the part of you that actually believes the Darvo. It is the part that absorbed the abuse and concluded, I am inherently flawed. I am unlovable. I deserve to be treated this way.
That's heartbreaking.
That is why you stay. You stay because your entire internal system is locked in an elaborate, exhausting survival strategy to keep the exile from feeling that agonizing pain.
So if the cage is this complex, if it involves dopamine addiction, childhood trauma blueprints, fragmented psyche parts, and a partner who actively, aggressively distorts reality using a predictable script, how do you ever dismantle it?
It takes work.
Because you can't out-logic a manipulation tactic.
Right.
If you try to argue with Darvo, you just get pulled deeper into the quicksand.
The first, most crucial step to breaking free is what we're doing right now in this deep dive. Psychoeducation.
Naming the demon.
Naming the demon strips it of its power. When you learn the terminology, when you can stand in your kitchen, look at an argument as it is happening, and say to yourself, okay, that is the narcissist's prayer. That sudden pivot is the attack phase of Darvo. That feeling in my chest is intermittent reinforcement. You break the narcissist's most powerful weapon, which is the distortion of your reality.
You see the matrix.
You pull back the curtain and see the rusty machinery operating. It stops feeling like you're losing your mind and starts looking like a sad, predictable script.
Okay, but tactically, in the physical moment, when they are screaming at you, bringing up your past, and reversing the victim and offender, What do you actually do? Because you can't just say, I see you are Darvoing me. That will just escalate the rage.
You utilize the broken record technique, and you memorize the acronym JADE. JADE. Do not justify, argue, defend, or explain.
Do not JAD.
When they attack your character to distract from their action, you do not defend your character. You refuse to take the Darvo bait. You simply repeat the original boundary like a broken record.
How does that sound in practice?
If they say, you always use that toxic tone of voice with me, you respond calmly. We are not talking about my tone of voice right now. We're talking about the fact that you lied to me.
And if they pivot again?
If they pivot again and say, your memory is terrible, you need help, you repeat it again, completely flat. We are not talking about my memory. We are talking about the lie.
You just starve them of the distraction, but what if they just keep escalating? What if the broken record just makes them furious?
You disengage entirely. You leave the room, you leave the house. Which brings us to the most painful but most necessary step in the recovery process: radical acceptance.
Radical acceptance of what?
Radical acceptance of the fact that you will never get a genuine apology. You will never get them to see your side, to validate your pain, to understand how much they hurt you, or to offer closure.
Never.
The clinical truth is that expecting a pathologically narcissistic person to give you empathetic closure is like going to a hardware store and being furious that they don't sell fresh-baked bread.
Wow.
You can yell at the cashier, you can cry in the aisles, you can explain how hungry you are, but they simply do not have the inventory. You have to stop going to the hardware store for bread.
That analogy hits so incredibly hard. You are begging for something they're fundamentally incapable of producing. You have to give yourself the closure.
And you cannot do it in isolation. The trauma isolates you, so the healing must connect you. As Dr. Sue Johnson, the developer of emotionally focused therapy, points out, because the wound happened in a relationship, the healing must happen in a relationship.
That means finding a trauma-informed therapist who understands covert abuse. It means finding safe friendships. It means finding communities, even online forums and survivor groups like the ones we source today, where your reality is consistently validated. Your nervous system has to learn, through repeated new experiences, that connection does not equal chaos.
You have to slowly, patiently teach your physical body that peace is actually safe, that you can drop the hypervigilance.
Let's recap the intense journey we've just been on. If you are listening to this and recognizing your own life, your own relationship, or your own childhood in these examples, hear this clearly. You are not crazy.
You are not.
The confusion, the brain fog, the self-doubt, the physical exhaustion, these are the documented clinical symptoms of surviving a reality distortion field. You have been subjected to an invisible architecture of evasion, from the insidious cascade of the narcissist's prayer to the biological hijacking of Darvo.
But before we conclude, I want to introduce a final, perhaps provocative thought for the listener to mull over. Something we haven't mentioned yet, but which builds on everything we've discussed about empathy and boundaries. It is the concept of healthy narcissism.
Wait, healthy narcissism after spending this entire deep dive dissecting how destructive it is?
Yes. This is based on the work of psychoanalyst Heinz Kohut. In pop culture, we tend to view narcissism as entirely evil, a purely toxic trait to be eradicated. But Kohut argued that a certain level of narcissism, what he termed healthy narcissism, is a fundamental human requirement.
How so?
It is the psychological bedrock of self-respect. It is the internal voice that says, I have inherent value. My needs matter. I deserve to be treated with dignity, and I will not allow myself to be demeaned.
So the goal of healing isn't to become completely selfless and eradicate all narcissism. Because if you do that, you just become the perfect, compliant victim again.
Exactly.
The goal is to cultivate a healthy, regulated sense of self-worth.
Pathological narcissism is a fragile balloon with a hole in it. It requires constantly draining the breath of others just to stay inflated. Healthy narcissism is a solid, concrete foundation.
I love that.
And here is why this matters deeply for the listener. The ultimate revenge against a pathological narcissist isn't to destroy them. It isn't to expose them to the world or to finally win the argument with the perfect logical point.
Because engaging with them on that level just gives them more narcissistic supply. It proves they still control your emotions.
Yes. The ultimate victory is to cultivate such a healthy, unshakable love and respect for yourself that their manipulative script becomes completely powerless. When you have cultivated healthy narcissism and someone tries to run Darvo on you, your internal foundation doesn't shake.
Your amygdala doesn't hijack you.
You simply look at them, Recognize the manipulation for what it is, a desperate defense mechanism from an emotionally arrested person, and you walk away.
You stop playing the game. You close the tab.
You render their entire script obsolete.
So we circle all the way back to where we started. You confront someone. You have the facts. But this time, when they look at you and say, that didn't happen, you don't doubt your own memory. When they say, you're too sensitive, you don't doubt your own barometer for pain. When they aggressively attack your character to change the subject, you don't apologize. You trust your own body. You trust your own memory. You trust your own truth. You are not alone. The script is broken and the hardware store is officially closed.